بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه. So inshallah, in today's class we're going to take two chapters. We're going to take chapter 15 and 16. Chapter 15 is going to talk about al-ahruf al-sab'a, the seven letters or the seven languages that the Quran was revealed in, which is a well-known tradition. And we're going to talk about what that means, and hopefully, inshallah, we can give some examples because it can become confusing because these are different than the seven qira'at, which is the next chapter, the seven recitations of the Quran. So the seven ahruf, the seven letters or the seven languages that the Quran is revealed in is different from the seven recitations of the Quran. I think the confusion comes because they're both seven. As we will come to see, the qira'at are 10, not 7. But the reason in this lecture we're doing both of these chapters together is exactly for this reason, so we can make the distinction. So in the seven languages of the Quran, we will come to see that the Uthmanic script of the Quran is the script that has been able to hold within it those seven languages or those seven letters. So the seven languages have to do with the words themselves. The seven qira'at are how we recite the Quran, the rules of tajweed and the different types of pronunciation of certain letters, the style of the recitation. When we come to learn about the qira'at, we will learn that there are, to make it simple, there are acceptable qira'at and there are not acceptable qira'at. Obviously there's much more detail, but for the purposes of the introductory clip, there are qira'at that we use that we can recite in the Quran, recite in the prayer for religious purposes, ibadat purposes, acts of devotion. And then there are other qira'at that have not reached the threshold. We will learn that there are certain conditions for a recitation to be accepted. And if it does not reach that threshold, then therefore it is not accepted. And then there is a difference of opinion of what do we do with it if it is not accepted. So these are the main topics, inshallah, that we will cover in these two clips. And I hope that at the end of the discussion, the differences will become clear. I'll see you back for the beginning of the discussion, inshallah. All right, so let's begin, inshallah, with chapter 15, al-ahruf al-sab'a, the seven letters or the seven languages of the Quran. Now, one of the stories that we have that, well, first of all, what is the seven? The seven are related to the seven Arab tribes at the time that, or at the time of the Risala, at the time of the message of the Prophet alayhi salatu salam. And these are the tribes that are mentioned or are referenced. So we have Quraysh, Hudayl, Tamim, Azd, Rabi'a, Hawazin, wa Sa'd ibn Bakr. These are the seven tribes. So these are the seven languages of the Arabic that emerged at the time of the revelation. There's the famous story that is narrated in both Bukhari and Muslim that I think will elucidate sort of as a good sort of entry point into this. And the story goes as follows, is that Umar ibn al-Khattab radiallahu anhu heard Hisham ibn Hakim reciting part of Surah Al-Furqan or reciting all of Surah Al-Furqan during the life of the Prophet alayhi salatu salam. So when Umar listened to him, he became infuriated, waited till he finished and then accosted him and said, who taught you how to read in this way? He said, the Prophet alayhi salatu salam. And then so Umar said, you lie, because the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam taught me that surah and that's not the way that he taught me. So they both went to the Prophet alayhi salatu salam, and Umar states to the Prophet alayhi salatu salam his concern. So the Prophet alayhi salam asked Hisham, read. So he read Surah Al-Furqan, and then he said, كَذَلِكَ أُنزِلَتْ. This is how it was revealed. And then he said, Umar, recite. And Umar recited Surah Al-Furqan, and he says, كَذَلِكَ أُنزِلَتْ. This is how it was revealed. إِنَّ هَذَا الْقُرْآنَ أُنزِلْ عَلَى سَبْعَةِ أَحْرُفٍ. that this Quran was revealed on these 7 languages. فَقْرَأُوا مَا تَيَسَّرَ مِنْهُ. So recite and read that which you can of it. So in this hadith, which is muttafaq alayhi, it's very significant because here the Prophet ﷺ affirmed that the Quran was revealed with those 7 ahruf, those 7 languages, and it is something that he taught to the Sahaba. So there are a lot of other hadith and a lot of other stories in this subject matter that you will find in the hadith literature. Ubay ibn Ka'b radiallahu anhu narrates a similar story that's narrated in Sahih Muslim, that somebody came to the mosque, recited the Quran, they were disputing with it, so they went to the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. And then the Prophet ﷺ affirmed these languages and also said that this has been revealed this way to make it easy for my ummah. One interpretation of that is easy at the time for the 7 major Arab tribes to be able to encompass and take within them and memorize the Quran. In another hadith tradition narrated by Bukhari and Muslim, the Prophet ﷺ said, as narrated by Ibn Abbas, أقرأني جبريل على حرف. Gabriel taught me the Quran in one language. فلم أزل أستزيده. So I kept asking for more, and he would give me more until we arrived at the 7 languages or the 7 letters. So these traditions and many more demonstrate without doubt that the Quran was revealed with these 7 languages. Of course, we're going to explain what that means in a moment. And that these ahruf, these languages, are something that are established by the primary sources. And for any of these to be considered valid, they have to go back to the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam in an unbroken chain of transmission. So this is not something that is based on ijtihad. This is not something that's based on opinion. This is not something that's based on popularity, but this is something that is based on direct teaching of the Prophet ﷺ to the companions. So in the stories, the companions that were, like Umar radiallahu anhu, for example, were objecting because he was not taught that. So again, the reference point is that, was this something that was taught by the Prophet ﷺ or not taught by the Prophet ﷺ? Now, the third thing about this is that based on the traditions that we just mentioned and the many more that are in this subject matter, the ahruf as-sab'a have to do with how the words are pronounced, which is a different matter than how the Quran is recited in its tajweed form. So here we're talking about the pronunciation of the words. So, and this is something that I want to just to pause on just for a second, so we're not confused between the 7 ahruf and the 7 qira'at. As I said in the introductory clip, they're 2 separate things, and the confusion perhaps is that they're 7 and 7. So I'll give examples either at the end of this clip or the next clip. I'll give you copious examples, inshallah, to make it clear. But here we are talking about how words are pronounced, not the recitation of the Quran. Also, it doesn't have to do with the interpretation of meanings. So the Sahaba in the hadith that we mentioned, the stories that we mentioned, they're not debating with each other about the meanings of the Quran. They're debating with each other on how the Quran is pronounced, how certain words are articulated, enunciated, pronounced, etc., not on the meanings. Okay. Now, when it comes to the ahruf as-sab'a, we have two opinions, two madhabs regarding them. This madhab, the second madhab, is the madhab that I said a while ago that said that these are the seven languages of the seven tribes that I just mentioned. That's the second opinion. The first opinion says that these are the different ways, which is kind of like splitting hairs, but the different ways that the different tribes would pronounce certain words. So, some of these differences are as follows. Like in the verse, some of the differences are in the differences of singular and plural. So in the verse, وَالَّذِينَ هُمْ لِأَمَانَاتِهِمْ وَعَهْدِهِمْ رَاعُونَ. أَمَانَاتِهِمْ is plural. One of the ahruf is لِأَمَانَتِهِمْ in its singular form. So the first one is أماناتهم نون ألف أماناتهم, and the second one it's لأمانتهم ميم ألف نون تا without the alif after the noon. So that would be an example of one of the ahruf, one of the pronunciations in its singular or its plural form. Now the difference is just an alif, and that's why the Ottomanic script is so important, because oftentimes we have the hanging alif on certain words, because then that way the hanging alif would allow us to keep both recitations possible at the same time. Let me pick up the discussion, inshallah, in the next clip. So, just to summarize what we're talking about, there are two opinions, two concurrently valid opinions about what the ahruf as-sab'a are. One of them, which is the one that we're going to kind of iron out a little bit with details, is saying that these are differences that exist in the pronunciation of words that you only will know when you investigate the actual words in the Quran. The second opinion says that the seven languages or the seven ahruf have to do with this, they are the languages of the seven tribes. So the first opinion is the one that has been more scholarly, it's the one that has been more fleshed out than the second opinion. But both are saying the same thing in the sense that there are differences. So one of the examples, I think in the book he gives 7 examples. So I begin with the first one about singular and plural, how some words can be recited in a plural form, لِأَمَانَاتِهِمْ, plural, أَمَانَاتِهِمْ, or singular, لِأَمَانَتِهِمْ. The second example has to do with the conjugation of verbs in the past or in the present tense or in the future. قالوا ربنا باعد بين أسفارنا. باعد بين أسفارنا. This is in the form of a dua. Another harf, another language is, so ربنا باعد. Another one is ربنا باعد, which is to say it in the past tense, that Allah Ta'ala thwarted us or kept us away from something. In the first one, or the way we normally recite it in the Quran, it is a form of dua. So this has to do with the different of conjugation. So here we have ba'ada, bih, alif, ain, dal, ba'ada, and in the second one we have ba'ada, bih, ain, dal, and there's a shadda and a fatha on the ain. So again, an alif is what demarcates the two. The third example, another example of the conjugation of words, ولا يضار كاتب ولا شهيد, with a fatha on the ra, ولا يضار And some will say وَلَا يُضَارُّ. Some will read it in the marfu' case, and some will read it in the mansub case. Again, from the script, it's the same. It's ye, dad, alif, ra. It's the same script, but it's the pronunciation or the conjugation of the verbs. A fourth example has to do with what can be extra or not extra. وَمَا خَلَقَ الذَّكَرَ وَالْأُنْثَى. One of the recitations, or not, when I mean recitations, I don't mean the qira'at, I mean the ahruf, will be وَالذَّكَرَ. الأنثى with a shadda on the that. So that's an extra stress on the that, on the dhail, on the that. So therefore, the script is the same, right? The word is written the same way. And that's why the Uthmanic script is so significant. A fifth example is advancing something or delaying something. فَيَقَتُلُونَ وَيُقْتَلُونَ. In another harf, it's فَيُقْتَلُونَ وَيَقَتُلُونَ. Now the problem is that both of them are spelled the same way. So from the script point of view, it's one. It's the voweling that's different, that one comes before the other. وَجَاءَتْ سَكْرَةُ الْمَوْتِ بِالْحَقِّ. In another one we have وَجَاءَتْ سَكْرَةُ الْحَقِّ بِالْمَوْتِ. This one is a little bit different because the script will not handle both of these differences. The differences of pronunciation of letters. So for example, وَانْظُرْ إِلَى الْعَظَامِ كَيْفَ نَنْشُزُهَا. Another one will say نَنْشُرُهَا. Instead of the zay, they say it's a ra. So the difference is the dot. Again, the Uthmanic script can handle that type of difference. And then the seventh example he gives is a difference of languages of the tribes. Like Musa, Musi. Musa, Musi. This has to do with pronunciation. And this is more like along the lines, kind of as a segue into the qira'at. So these examples that he gives, just 7 simple examples, with the exception of the one word that, one comes before the other, which the script can't handle it, that would probably just be from a narration point of view. But the Uthmanic script then therefore can handle the pronunciation of these words. And why the Quran can only be written in the Uthmanic script, and then that was the efforts of Sayyidina Abu Bakr were different from the efforts of Sayyidina Uthman. Sayyidina Abu Bakr wanted to bring the Quran together and take out from the text anything that was not the Quran. So there were many times in which people would recite things and they would recite words of tafsir as part of the verse. So obviously that's not the Quran, that's a tafsir. Like we call it like interlinear commentary, where you have like in brackets, this is part of the Quran, and then right after that is a commentary on that. But if you don't have brackets, because that's a modern typography thing, then you would all read as one sentence. So what Sayyidina Abu Bakr did, radiallahu anhu, he's like, okay, we're going to take out all that extra stuff, we're just going to have the Quran. But what Sayyidina Uthman did, radiallahu anhu, is he standardized the script to be able to withhold the 7 lughat, the 7 ahruf, which is quite significant. The majority opinion is that, what I'm saying is the majority opinion, is that the Uthmanic script holds the 7 ahruf, the 7 languages, and we continue to use those in our recitation, and those will be incorporated later on in the qira'at, when people are studying the qira'at with the different tajweed rules. This will make its way in that as well. Of course, all of them have to go back to the Prophet ﷺ without doubt. Like, this is what I was fishing for. I found the page finally. Like, what is one of the things that Sayyidina Abu Bakr took out of the Quran? وَصَلَاةُ الْوُسْطَى وَهِيَ صَلَاةُ الْعَصْرِ. وَهَيَ صَلَاةُ الْعَصْرِ, that's not part of the verse. That's a tafsir. Somebody is saying, maybe it was Ibn Abbas or something, saying this is a tafsir of the Salat al-Wusta. So at the Qur'ans, at the time of Sayyidina Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, it would be written, وَصَلَاةُ الْوُسْطَى وَهِيَ صَلَاةُ الْعَصْرِ. So no, that part's not the Qur'an. It's only وَصَلَاةُ الْوُسْطَى. ولا جناح عليكم أن تبتغوا فضلا من ربكم في مواسم الحج. في مواسم الحج is not part of the verse. It's just a tafsir. So what Sayyidina Abu Bakr did radiallahu anhu is to take out that part في مواسم الحج and just keep the verse part. But he was not concerned with standardizing the script because there were no dots or diacritical marks or anything like that. That came during the Khilaf of Sayyidina Uthman radiallahu anhu, which is why we call the script of the Quran the Uthmanic script. So the Uthmanic script therefore is going to be able to handle, with its hanging alifs and things like that, handle the different ways. Maliki Yawmiddin or Maliki Yawmiddin. Maliki Yawmiddin, that's the way I recite it, that's Hafs and Asim. Mim Alif. But in the Mus'haf, it's just written Mim, Lam, Kaf, and there's a hanging Alif between the Mim and the Lam. So you could recite it Maliki Yawmiddin, or you can recite it like the Warsh, Maliki Yawmiddin. So both of those recitations, that has to do more with the qira'at, I understand, but just to give you an example of a word, that both of those can be handled by the way the script, the orthography of the Uthmanic orthography of the Quran. So the Uthmanic orthography has its own rules, by the way, and it's its own sub-science that people can study. They have poems about it, books about it, in which you memorize the rules, and then obviously you demonstrate the rules by writing out the Mus'haf yourself. And any published Mus'haf, you'll see that it will state very clearly that it follows the Uthmanic script, and that's what that's about. Okay, so that's the Ahruf al-Sab'a. I think I spent a little bit more time on that than I wanted to. In the next clip, inshallah, we're going to talk about the qira'at of the Quran, and which is probably what we're more familiar with, and we will learn about the original 7, and then they extended the 7 to the 3, and we'll learn about why that's important, inshallah. And I think there was one last thing I wanted to say about the Ahruf. I think those are the major points. Okay? Walhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. I'll see you back in the next clip, inshallah. Okay, chapter 16, the Qira'at. So, the recitations of the Quran, for them to be acceptable recitations, there has to, number one, it has to be compatible with Arabic grammar, even if it's one opinion of Arabic grammar. So obviously, in grammar, we have the two main schools of the Kufins and the Basrins. Is that Basrites? Kufites, Basrites. Kufins and Basrins. I hope that's right. But Kufa and Basra, the two madhahib of Nahu. So sometimes they have differences of opinion. As long as the qira'ah, the recitation is compatible with at least one of them, then we can't critique it. That's the first rule. Number two is that that it has to be compatible with the orthography of the Quran, the Uthmanic script. So it can't be something that's off of that. And number three, it has to come to us through a sound narration. Okay, so that's super important that we understand. The grammar point, again, as long as it's acceptable to one of the schools, then that's fine. For example, he gives وَاتَّقُوا اللَّهَ الَّذِي تَسَاءَلُونَ بِهِ وَالْأَرْحَامِ. In the recitation of Hamza, al-arham is majroor, because it is linked to a damir that is majroor. And this is the Kufin opinion, not the Basran opinion. So this is something that we can't criticize because it follows one of the opinions of Nahu. Now, following the script of the Quran, it either follows it tahqiqan or ihtimalan. Tahqiqan is it literally follows what's written in the Mus'haf. Ihtimalan is that the script gives a possibility of this recitation being used. The example, I gave you this example in the previous clip, which was Maliki Yawmiddin in Surah Al-Fatiha. It is written Mim, Lam, Kaf, and between the Mim and the left there's a hanging Alif. That's the Uthmanic script of how you spell Maliki in Surah Al-Fatiha. To follow the Mus'haf, tahqiqan, to follow the script literally, is to recite it Maliki Yawmiddin. But to recite it in a way that the script can handle it, ihtimalan, it's Maliki Yawmiddin, like the way that we recite it in Hafs. And then as far as the chain of transmission is concerned, we're going to use the same rules and parameters and disciplines of hadith sciences, because those aren't the rules of hadith sciences, those are the rules of the science of transmission, of ilm al-naql, if you wanted to call it that. So al-jarh wa-ta'dil, the adala of the narrators, looking up the qualities of the narrators, so where they lived, how they lived, so on and so forth. All of that stuff, same disciplines apply to verifying the chains of transmission of the qira'at. Now, as far as the ranking, there are 6 ranks of the qira'at. The first are the qira'at that come to us through tawatur, diffuse congruence, which is the highest form, and the vast majority of the qira'at are mutawatir. Then below that are mashhur, which is just below the threshold of mutawatir, but didn't quite make it to mutawatir. So the tawatur qira'at we accept. The mashhur qira'at we also accept. Then there is number 3, the ahad, the singularly narrated chains of transmission. We do not accept these as qira'at because it's too low of a threshold. فَلَا تَجُوزُ الْقِرَاءَةُ بِهِ. So it's not permissible for us to use the qira'at that have come to us through singular transmission, ahad, for purposes of worship. Number 4, ashad, those which are non-canonical, let's say, do not have a sound chain of transmission or do not follow the Arabic language, so on and so forth. Like malaka yawmiddin. Malaka in the past tense, that doesn't work. You can't have that. So those obviously we can't accept as qira'at. And then we have mawdu', forged qira'at. Well, obviously we don't accept those because they're forged and they have been brought to us through people who have known to lie and to make things up. And then number 6 is we have those things which look like tafsir. Like وَكَانَ وَرَائِهِمْ مَلَكٌ يَأْخُذُ كُلَّ سَفِينَةٍ صَالِحَ غَصْبًا. That word صالحة is a tafsir. Behind them, when Moses asked the Khidr, why did you puncture the boat? He said, well, behind the family was a usurper that was taking every boat. So the tafsir is every good boat. That's why I wanted to damage it so it's not a good boat. So that's a tafsir, that's not a qira'ah. So we can use that for the purposes of tafsir. The upshot of this is that we are always going to look at the strongest of the narrations, obviously the mutawatir and the mashhur, for us to consider them recitations that we can use in the Quran purposes. Everything other than that we're not going to use obviously for devotional purposes. The first person to bring all of this together was Ibn Mujahid, was Ahmed ibn Musa ibn al-Abbas, who was known as Ibn Mujahid, who died in the year 324, and he has his book Al-Qira'at al-Sab'. So let me give you finally the names of these people. You need to know their names and their dates. The first one is Abdullah bin Kathir al-Dari al-Makki. He died in the year 120 of the Hijrah. And then Abdullah ibn Amir al-Yahsabi al-Shami, who died in the year 118. Number 3 is Asim ibn Abi al-Nujud al-Asdi al-Kufi, who died in the year 127. Number 4 is Abu Amr Zabban ibn Ala al-Basri or al-Bisri, who died in the year 154. Number 5 is Hamza ibn Habib al-Zayyat al-Kufi, he died in the year 156. And then Nafi' ibn Abd al-Rahman ibn Abi Naim al-Madani, he died in the year 169. And then number 7 is Abu al-Hasan Ali ibn Hamza al-Kasai al-Nahwi al-Kufi, who died in the year 189, radiyallahu anhum ajma'in. Upon further, work in the field, 3 more were discovered, which are number 8, 9, and 10. Number 8 is Abu Ja'far Yazid ibn al-Qaqa al-Madani. He died in the year 130. Yaqub ibn Ishaq al-Hadrami, who died in the year 205. And number 10 is Khalaf ibn Hisham, who died in the year 229. Radiyallahu anhum ajma'in. So these are the 10 famous recitations of the Quran, the people that they go back to, narrated to us with, tawatur. For the vast majority of them, a couple of them are just a little bit less than tawatur and mashhur, which is why in usul al-fiqh there's sometimes a difference of opinion if we accept the mashhur or not as a qira'ah. But from the point of view of the recitation, the prayers, we accept universally the 10. Okay, so the qira'at then tell us how we recite the Quran, the rules of the recitation and things. Coupled with that will be inside them the 7 ahruf that we just took. Now, as far as the non-canonical recitations, the shadh recitations, for example, the ulama debate how we can use them, whether we use them or not. Of course, I lost my. Oh, here we go. Like Shafi'i radiallahu anhu and others say we don't use them at all for tafsir purposes, but Abu Hanifa radiallahu anhu says that sometimes we can use them for the purposes of adducing or proving a point in language. Now, the Shaykh in the book also talks about some Orientalists that use the qira'at to talk about the weakness of the Quranic script. I didn't want to get into that because I think the analysis of the Orientalists is a little weak, because he just quotes Golds here and just like one quote by Golds here. But we don't need to go to the Orientalists. We know that there are Muslims themselves that will critique the Quran and the script of the Quran. The important thing is for you to remember is that all of this goes back to our science of naql, of how we transmit information. So the Quran, the hadith, everything that we have in our religion comes from that. It comes from transmission. So transmission is the engine that allows us to pass things on over and over again. And we are very open when something does not reach the threshold of proper transmission, and we say that it is rejected. Wallahu ta'ala a'la wa a'lam wa sallallahu ala sayyidina wa maulana Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Alhamdulillah, in today's class we were able to take 2 large topics. The first topic was the al-ahruf al-sab'a, the 7 languages or the 7 letters that the Quran was revealed with, and this refers to the pronunciation of certain words in the Quran that the Prophet ﷺ taught the Sahaba, different pronunciations of different words. We looked at a lot of the hadith traditions, that stories, especially the famous story of Sayyidina Umar radiallahu anhu and Hisham in disputing how to recite passages of Surah Al-Furqan, and other traditions that we looked at, but that's the most famous one. So there are these different pronunciations of certain words, and then the 7 ahruf, the 7 languages. We gave you some examples from the book about singular and plural, about advancing one thing or another, and conjugation of verbs, etc. And we said that the ahruf al-sab'a are withheld within the Uthmanic script. So the Uthmanic script, the reason we have the strict rules of the Uthmanic script, the Uthmanic orthography of the Quran, is because that is how you can maintain all of those 7 pronunciations of the letters. And then that is different than the second topic we talked about, which is the topic of the qira'at, the topic of the recitations of the Quran. We looked at the original 7 and then the extra 3 to give us a total of 10. And we looked at how that they must be compatible with proper grammatical understanding of the Arabic language. Even if it's one opinion, it has to match the orthography of the Quran, the script of the Quran, the Uthmanic script. And number 3, it has to come to us through sound transmission. And of course, the vast majority of the qira'at come to us through a mutawatir transition. Some of them come to us through a mashhur tradition. And anything lower than that, we might accept it as tafsir or commentary or something like that, but we do not accept it from the point of view of purposes of using it devotionally in the prayer. And then lastly, I made just a small allusion to some of the retractors of the Quran and the qira'at. And the real answer to that is just to remember that all of this comes from the same method, which is the method of transmission, the message of naql. So the message of transmission, asanid, jarh, ta'dil, ilm al-rijal, all of those sciences of transmission, that's what proves to us that what we have is authentic and usable, and we don't waver in that belief. Walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Mawlana Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam.